people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. The latest as it pertains to what's supposed to be the Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney fight. Oscar De La Hoya has confirmed that they have no plans to pull Ryan Garcia out of the Devin Haney fight in April. I spoke to him yesterday, FaceTiming. He looks good. He looks ready. He left the camp yesterday. There's 6 to 7 weeks left. That's perfect timing. It's all good. Ryan Garcia himself provided reassurances that he wouldn't talk about conspiracy theories on his social media anymore. Oscar's providing reassurances that he will make it. He's fine. He's going to be able to fight. Here's the thing. This is not a fight that I'm excited about per se. This is not a fight to where I'm left scratching my head wondering who's going to win. I believe that Devin Haney is in every way you can imagine a better boxer and a more consummate professional, a more disciplined athlete than Ryan Garcia, with all the consistency and stability that Ryan doesn't have. So as far as the fight, or a fight in and of itself, it's not one that I'm all that excited about. I don't even view it as an even contest.
That's before all this mental health stuff started.
The mental health stuff, genuine or otherwise, just drives that point home that Ryan is not long for the sport of boxing. He doesn't have what it takes to make it, and if he does make it to the fight in April, he's gonna fucking lose.
Oscar says he's going to.
WBA champion Romero, he's not happy about that. He says, fuck Golden Girl. As someone who suffered with their own mental health crisis, Oscar should have been the first one to step up and protect Ryan from himself. But instead he's dead silent because he's too busy trying to milk his only cash cow before the contract goes tits up. Shame on you, Oscar, for not standing up for the kid when he needs you the most. And oh yeah, fuck the Zone.
Fuck the Zone? What did they do?
All the people at the Zone did was offer you more money for a Ryan Garcia fight than you stand to make losing to Isaac Cruz, and I do think he's gonna lose.
It's a separate matter.
I mean, this guy's so brainwashed, he let the people at the PBC convince him to take less money.
He admitted it.
He's gonna make less from the Isaac Cruz fight than what he was offered to fight Ryan. We all know the Ryan Garcia fight would have been a much bigger fight for Rolly than what he's about to do. He's on the undercard.
You would have been in the main event and you let them convince you to fight on the undercard instead.
So you can shout it from the rooftops, fuck the Zone. Al Heyman just fucked you. Fucked you out of a lot of money.
And you're going bald. Jesus.
But he's taking shots at Oscar because he feels that Ryan is mentally unwell and Oscar's not doing enough about it. In truth,
I don't believe Ryan.
But even if you do, nothing he's said by way of his social media, nothing he's said constitutes a breach of contract, pulling out of this fight, and he would need a good reason to pull out of this fight.
More than just conspiracy theories you can find on your run-of-the-mill YouTube channel.
More than stories about lizard people, aliens, and Bohemian Grove, what the elites like to do on the weekend. More than stories about what may or may not have happened in his childhood.
It'd have to be a situation to where he's a danger to himself and others to prove that he's mentally unfit to fight.
Gibberish online and conspiracy theories, no matter how much he spouts them, doesn't necessarily constitute that. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he's faking. He's faking the whole thing.
He wants to pull out so that he can have the fight postponed to a later date where it can be staged in Las Vegas, where he might get more money.
Where he might not get taxed as much as he would in New York, if it happens in New York, and where he can make more in Vegas.
It's about the money.
I believe it's about the money. I believe the whole thing is an act. That's really all that's in it for Ryan Garcia. He doesn't care about being a champion.
It's the money.
It's all that's in it for Ryan. That's all that's in it for Devin Haney, too. Profile boost and the money.
They're around the same age, Ryan and Devin, but there's a stark contrast between them. At the age that he is now, in his mid-20s, Devin's already a 2-division champion. He was undisputed at 135, WBC at 140.
Yeah, some people like to criticize how it was he became an undisputed champion and who he had to go through, and I understand that, but I also understand that That's more than Ryan's ever done. Ryan had the same opportunity to corner a fight with that same George Kambosos that Devin did.
Think about it.
After George beats Teofimo, in between the time that he beats Teofimo and he starts doing business with Top Rank, that was Ryan's window of opportunity right there. If he wanted it, that was his window to corner a fight with George and see if he can't take those belts from him. Now, we all know he didn't bother. He didn't capitalize.
Devin did.
As soon as the opportunity presented itself, Devin did. And that's because Devin's made out of different stuff than Ryan Garcia. That's why the fight between them doesn't really intrigue me.
I understand why Devin is doing it.
And if it goes through, I'll buy it. I'll watch it. But I'm just saying, for all the hullabaloo about Ryan Garcia's mental health, his mental state, and whether or not he'll make it to the fight, if it actually happens, it's not a fight I'm that excited about. I understand why it's happening, but I'm not intrigued.
Are you?
Come on, who do you think is gonna win the fucking fight, if it does happen?
Who's your money on?
You know what I'm saying. Men's super middleweight news per a tweet from Dan Rafael via his sources with direct knowledge of the deal. Canelo versus Munguia is being finalized. Not signed yet, but no issues. May 4th, T-Mobile Arena on Prime Video pay-per-view and DAZN pay-per-view. A one-fight deal that will pay Canelo north of $35 million. Told Golden Boy is not involved.
But DAZN is?
The structure of the deal, the opponent, all of it is peculiar, because you're going into a one-fight deal with the PBC on Amazon so that you could fight a fighter that's on DAZN.
A Golden Boy Promotions fighter.
Then what do you need with the PBC? What do you need from them? What do you need from Prime?
Well, they are a global streaming platform.
Yeah, but so is DAZN. More importantly, DAZN caters to the sports fan, i.e. the boxing fan, whereas boxing fans customarily, they don't go to Amazon for boxing.
So what do you need them for?
The most that Canelo stands to gain, and the show itself, from having the fight broadcasted by both Amazon and DAZN is, I guess it can reach that many more people if it's marketed to that many more people. People subscribe to DAZN, people subscribe to Amazon, which aren't necessarily the same people, no.
Not necessarily.
This is said to be a one-fight deal. A one-fight deal. A dramatic turnaround from what was the three-fight deal he reached with Al Heyman last year. Per a tweet from Mike Kopinger, which you may have heard already, the old deal was torn up. The three-fight deal.
This is a new one.
So if you had to go as far as terminating the old deal with the PBC prematurely and making a new one, a one-fight deal, essentially a one-off, but the opponent is from another platform, fights under another banner, then once again, what do you need from Al Heyman? What do you need from the PBC, from Amazon?
DAZN being involved.
That's peculiar because Golden Boy isn't. I mean, if it's the way that Dan Rafael says it is, and there's no involvement from Golden Boy, then why is DAZN involved?
I don't imagine they're too happy about that.
Oscar De La Hoya, Golden Boy Promotions, because Jaime Munguia is a Golden Boy Promotions fighter, even if they're not at the helm of promotion, I can only imagine that they're going to get a piece of his purse.
They might.
Even if they're not promoting the show, if he still is their fighter, they'll get a cut. They'll get a percentage. That is, if he is still one of their fighters.
Is he?
Seems to be a lot of fingers in this pie, quite unnecessarily, though the fight itself, it should be a box office hit. It should be a commercial success. The old lion versus the young lion. Two Mexican nationals, Tijuana versus Jalisco.
Boxer puncher, counter puncher versus pressure fighter.
That's a fun stylistic matchup. Think Jaron Ennis versus Roman Villa.
Terrence Crawford versus Sean Porter.
Gervonta Davis versus Isaac Cruz.
It's a fun stylistic matchup.
But it's a matchup that favors Canelo Alvarez. It's a stylistic clash that favors the already more experienced and more proven, nuanced fighter in Canelo Alvarez. People tend to forget that when he was younger and he was coming through, he was a great counterpuncher.
He still is.
But his base style lives somewhere now in between the boxer puncher, the counterpuncher, and the pressure fighter. Due to his small stature, he's tasked with closing the distance on what often are much taller fighters than himself. I mean, Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant, Callum Smith.
Daniel Jacobs.
The vast majority of fighters that he's been fighting the last few years have all been taller guys, longer guys than he is. So when you're the shorter guy, you can't hope to fight the fight from the outside. You don't have the physical dimensions, the height and the length to do that. Thus, you have to come forward.
Yeah.
You have to apply pressure.
Yeah.
Thus, Canelo Alvarez has wandered into that realm of the pressure fighter where he's coming forward and putting pressure on the other guy in an educated way, catching and shooting out of the high guard.
He's not a textbook pressure fighter, but he can apply pressure when he needs to.
How do you know he's not a textbook pressure fighter?
Because he still doesn't have a pressure fighter's work rate. He doesn't have a pressure fighter's volume.
More crude examples of pressure fighters, textbook pressure fighters from different grades, A level, B level, C level. A-level pressure fighters a Chocolatito. B-level pressure fighters a Jaime Munguia, David Benavidez.
C-level's a Roman Villa.
And what you notice about every single one of these pressure fighters of different grades is that they all throw punches in bunches. They're all volume punchers. Now, some apply pressure more safely than others, slipping and countering, rolling and countering,
catching and shooting.
but they're all volume punchers. They all throw a lot of punches within a round.
That's what separates Canelo Alvarez from them. He's more economic. He does a lot of punch picking. His methodology of applying pressure is coming forward, baiting the opponent to throw so he can counter what they throw.
Allowing him to use his counter punching, allowing him to use his speed, his accuracy, his timing, and his power.
That's why he's not a textbook pressure guy.
He can apply pressure, he can mimic some of the characteristics of a pressure fighter, but not all of them. He doesn't go out there winging shots for the sake of winging shots and throwing punches just to be throwing punches.
Pressure fighters have a tendency to do that.
Even the really good ones, they do open up quite a bit, even really good pressure fighters. Now, he's going to be fighting a pressure fighter in Jaime Munguia,
He's a more textbook pressure fighter than Canelo.
which makes for a fun fight because he's not going to spend the whole night retreating, moving away from the pocket like Jermall Charlo did, or Erslandy Lara, that frustrating and pesky base style. Nobody really wants to see that.
Sweet science snobs like to pretend that you're supposed to appreciate that shit, when the truth is, most of the paying public doesn't want to see you run around the ring all night.
There's a thin line between moving to stay out of trouble and outright running, outright retreating. Oftentimes, these are the guys that have to apologize for performances like Rigo's against Casemiro or Jermaine Ortiz's against Teofimo.
Fuck that shit.
Thankfully, we won't have to worry about that on May 4th because Jaime is a come-forward textbook volume puncher pressure fighter, and Canelo has some of the characteristics of the pressure fighter. So you're going to get an action fight
Should be good.
between two real Mexican nationals and not a guy from Arizona pretending to be from Mexico.
Come on.
The opportunity was there. I had to take a jab at him. But I like this fight, and I'm looking forward to it. Men's heavyweight news. More on the ring return of Dillian Whyte, who's set to return to action in Ireland later on this month on the 17th. BoxingScene.com has learned Dillian Whyte will return to action March 17th in Ireland and is signed to meet the highly experienced, durable Christian Hammer. The bout will headline a card titled Once Upon a Time in the West at the TF Royal Hotel and Theatre in Castlebar, Ireland. I'm excited to be back, Whyte said, especially to have my first fight in Ireland, which has long been a dream of mine. The last time I was in Ireland was to support Carl Frampton when he fought Chris Avalos, and there was a brilliant atmosphere in the arena, and the people everywhere were amazingly warm and friendly. For those not already aware, Dillian Whyte was able to clear his name, quote-unquote clear his name, by making the determination that the banned substance found in his system was in a supplement he ingested, but the banned substance itself was not listed in the ingredients.
He plans on suing.
Because had it been listed in the ingredients, then he would have known it was there and known not to ingest it. I mean, you see what the hierarchy of thought is, but that's the story. That's the gist of it.
You're all caught up.
I've only had 4 fights over the last 4 years, and so I need to get active again. Look how well Joseph Parker and Anthony Joshua are doing now, with decent activity. Whyte's trainer, Buddy McGirt, said they're ready to turn the page away from the negativity of Whyte's layoff. Listen, we don't dwell on it. We keep looking ahead to keep the train rolling, McGirt told BoxingScene.com on Monday. Sky Sports first reported that an official review of the adverse finding led to an expert reporting Mr. Whyte was the victim of a contaminated supplement that did not disclose the contaminant among its ingredients, and he did not ingest the contaminant intentionally. McGirt said Whyte has remained dedicated to training, and he's shed a lot of weight getting back on track. I still believe he can be a world champion as long as he keeps doing what we're working on. Whyte hasn't fought since late 2022 in November, a majority decision triumph over then unbeaten Jermaine Franklin. His timing might be impeccable, perhaps landing him a spot on the upcoming Eddie Hearn versus Frank Warren Matchroom versus Queensberry boxing show 5 for 5, headlined by Artur Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol. Hopefully, now that Saudi Arabia appears to have opened up boxing and the promoters are finally working together and making the fights that need to be made, I will finally have some of the fights I've been chasing for years, Whyte said. First things first, I'm looking forward to getting back in the ring in Ireland on St. Patrick's Day, and we'll take it from there.
There's a lot of options out there for Dillian. A lot of opportunities.
He's got to get through Christian Hammer first. Christian Hammer, who's coming off a loss to Joe Joyce and hasn't seen action since July of 2022. That's saying that he's been out for well over a year. And so is Dillian. He hasn't boxed since November of that same year, but he's coming off a win, whereas Christian is coming off a loss. If he can get through Christian,
a Daniel Dubois fight becomes a possibility. A Joe Joyce fight becomes a possibility.
They could use him on the Matchroom versus Queensberry 5-for-5 show. He could work as a ringer for Matchroom. Even though he was never actually a Matchroom fighter, he was never actually signed to a multi-fight deal, he's done a lot of business with them. He was working with them on a fight-by-fight basis.
So because of how many Matchroom shows he's fought on, he's considered by many to be a Matchroom fighter, even though he's not under contract with them.
You get the gist of it. And he could fight Daniel Dubois over the summer months. He could fight Joe Joyce over the summer months. Any one of those two.
There's another option, another possibility. You heard what Dillian said. Fights that he's been chasing for years. What's a fight that he's been chasing for years?
Yeah, Daniel Dubois is a good fight and Joe Joyce is a good fight, but that's not a fight that Dillian's been chasing. That's not a fight that he's been after for years. One fight that he has been after for years is a Wilder fight.
Deontay Wilder.
Deontay Wilder, who Tyson Fury very recently said is going to be returning in another massive fight. He says, I think he can come back. Sure, I think he's fighting again. I actually know he's fighting again, but I can't drop who and what date. But it's coming soon. A massive fight with Wilder involved.
Well, it's not Anthony Joshua. He's busy.
It's not Tyson Fury. Thankfully, it's not Tyson Fury. It's not Alexander Usyk. They're preoccupied with each other. So what fight could Wilder be in that makes for a massive fight?
Andy Ruiz?
That's not a massive fight. There are only so many people interested in seeing that here in America. Abroad, I highly doubt there's foreign interest in seeing those two former champions lock horns, even if it makes for a decent fight. It's not a massive fight. Now, a Dillian Whyte fight.
That's bigger. Why is that bigger? Transatlantic.
Two fan bases divided by water. Two sets of fans. One in the United Kingdom and another in the United States. That will draw more global attention to the match. And it's the kind of fight that the Saudis could bankroll.
A chance to get back in the mix of things for both Dillian Whyte and Deontay Wilder. Deontay's coming off that lopsided loss to Joseph Parker, but if he can beat the man who beat Joseph Parker...
Remember, Dillian beat him years ago.
It'll help.
Wilder's resume's not aging too good. It's not looking too hot. It's not.
Your best win is Luis Ortiz. You've had over 40 fights, and your best win is Luis Ortiz.
As soon as he stepped up in class, just a smidge, just a bit, that's as soon as he started losing. Losing to Tyson Fury, losing to Joseph Parker.
Don't let him lose to Dillian.
That'll make it even worse. If he loses to Dillian Whyte? If he were to lose to Dillian Whyte, when this era of heavyweights is remembered, Wilder would be further towards the bottom.
Because you never actually beat Andy Ruiz. You never actually fought AJ.
You lost to Parker. You fought Fury 3 times and didn't win didn't win once.
And you never fought Usyk.
I don't care what his fanboys think would have happened or could have happened or this or that. You don't get credit for fights that don't happen. You don't get credit for postulations.
If he loses to Dillian?
Assuming he even fights him, because let's not put the cart before the horse.
We don't know if that's going to happen yet.
If it did, that'd be bad.